Good morning. Me and Stacy are getting ready for our wedding, and it's getting closer and closer. And we have a couple premarital counseling sessions, and we're getting a lot of advice from a lot of people. And one of the biggest things, of course, is happy wife, happy life. Just keep her happy. It's a hard thing to do.
You're not married yet.
Yeah. No, but I was reading a story, and it kind of just came to mind. Thought I'd share it with you guys. There was this elderly couple that were sitting on a park bench, and across the park was these vendors that were selling all types of food and different things. And the wife turned to the husband and said, "I could really go for an ice cream cone." So of course, he says, "Well, I'll go get it for you." She said, "Okay, you might want to write it down. I don't want you to forget what I want." He said, "Oh, my memory's not that bad. I'll remember what you want." That was a mistake. So anyway, he said, "What do you want?" She said, "Strawberry ice cream cone, chocolate sprinkles." He said, "Strawberry ice cream, chocolate sprinkles. I got it. I won't forget." And then he walks away, and he's gone for about an hour. He comes back, and she says, "What took you so long? I thought you got lost." He said, "No, I didn't get lost. As a matter of fact, I got you exactly what you asked for." And hands her this brown paper bag. She opens it up, and there's a cheeseburger and french fries in the bag. She says, "I knew you should have wrote this down." And he said, "No," he said, "I got you everything. What did I mess up?" She said, "You forgot the pickles." They had both forgotten what they were doing. This morning, it is true to say that we can be a little bit forgetful. There are some things that we forget so easily. There are also some things this morning that we try to remember, and we can't. Our memory, it tends to be a funny thing, and while some things are so easy to forget, those usually be the things that we want to remember, and then there's some things that we try to remember and we can't, and it's just a tricky thing. Our brokenness this morning is something that maybe we want to forget. Maybe we want to not remember our past brokenness and sins. We want to be able to forget about that. And I don't know that we're completely supposed to forget about it altogether. I mean, we talked last week about realizing that we're broken and limiting that brokenness. Now, some of you may have already forgotten what we talked about last week. After all, we tend to forget things. But this morning we're going to continue to look at how God can work through our human brokenness. We need to stop remembering all of our past failures this morning. Stop harking on how broken we've been in the past and thinking that stops us from doing something in the present or even in the future. We just focus on our past mistakes, our past failures, and our brokenness that fills our past. As we're in this series called God's People are Broken People, we're going to look at a different broken person from the Bible each week. So last week was Eve. We looked at how all of our brokenness started with Eve as she was broken. Next week we're going to look at Abraham and how even your brokenness in your present situations, God can still work through. Then we're going to close this up looking at Judas and Peter and how if we just stick around, God can even fix our future brokenness. But this week we're looking at God, at how God can work in our past brokenness. And so to do that, we're going to look at the life of Moses. And I knew that we were going to be talking about Moses this morning, so I did what any good preacher would do, right? So I did some research, and I watched the Disney movie The Prince of Egypt last night as my research. Now, I can assure you that wasn't the extent of my preparation, but it's a good movie. The production team of this movie has said that they met with over 600 religious leaders just to try and make sure that they get the story right. And of course, they don't get everything right, but I think it's pretty close. It's actually banned in Malaysia and Indonesia because it's so close to the actual scriptural truth. It's a really good movie. And this movie, it tells the story of Moses. It tells the story of the Exodus. It tells the story of his life. And Moses was a broken man. You see that? If you watch this film, you see that if you read the scripture. Moses was a broken man. So today we're going to look at his life. This life that movies have been made after. This life that oftentimes we look at as a model of faithfulness and godliness. And of course it was. Moses was a faithful and godly man. But at the same time, he was a broken man. I mean, in the movie, Moses accidentally kills a man who is beating a Hebrew slave. It's a pretty big scene in the movie. Moses finds out that he's a Hebrew, and then he sees this Hebrew being beaten, and so he just is trying to be a good guy and break the fight up, or break this up, and accidentally pushes the man off a bridge. And then he realized what he did, and he ran away. So that's pretty bad, right? Well, the truth this morning is actually a little bit worse than that. They kind of watered it down. I mean, of course, it was a Disney film, but look at, in Exodus chapter 2, we see the true account of what happened in that situation. In Exodus chapter 2, so the story kind of gets the lead up right, or the movie, but listen to what actually happens according to Scripture. Now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that. And when he saw there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. You see what really happened? I mean, this was a straight up murder. He straight up looked and said, can I get away with it? Is there anyone looking? Okay, there's no one looking. I can kill him and then hide the body. I mean, he straight up just killed this Egyptian. Think of our prisons this morning. They're filled with murderers, people that did exactly this. People that did just what Moses did. They looked to see if they could get away with something, and then they didn't. They tried to cover it up. Our world is filled with broken people this morning. And oftentimes we look at these people and we have the thought that maybe they're too far gone. We have the thought that, well, maybe nothing can be done for them or through them. Honestly, I hate this. This is one of the things that Christians do that it drives me insane because it's so far from the biblical truth. See, we look at someone and we think they're a bad person. We look at someone who maybe they're a murderer, or maybe we look at someone who they've just done something to hurt us, or maybe we just look at someone who we've heard some gossip about, or just someone who has a reputation for doing something, or maybe we look at someone that we've heard something and we just think, they're such a bad person. Nothing can reach them. They're too broken. And what we're quick to forget is that God's people are broken people. What we're so quick to forget is that God can save and use anyone. God can save this broken and murderous Moses and use him in some spectacular and amazing ways. Then who can God not use this morning? Who can God not use? Do we really believe this morning that God is powerful enough to use broken people? We shouldn't. Honestly, I fear that sometimes we don't. That sometimes I think we underestimate God's power to save people. Because when you look at someone and make the judgment, well, God can't save them, you're not making a judgment of that person. What you're doing is you're underestimating God's power. You're making a judgment on God. You're saying, God, you can't work that much. God, you're not that powerful enough. You can't work in their life. And you may think you're condemning that person, but really, you're just telling God he's not powerful enough. What do you believe about God this morning? To be honest, I don't think that we just underestimate God's power to save other people. I think that a lot of times we underestimate God's power to save us. A lot of times we think we're too broken. A lot of times we look at our past and we think, that's too much. That's too sinful. That's too horrible. We do horrible things and sometimes we think we can't come back from those things. Or we think that we're too broken. We think God can't use us. God can't work in our life. And Moses felt this way. We're going to continue to look at the life of Moses. We're going to look at a few different events. But in Exodus chapter 3, God talks to Moses. And God tells him he's going to be the one to save the Israelites. And Moses said, no, I'm not. He said, I can't do that. He said, you can't use me for that. Now, in Exodus chapter 3, they're having this conversation, and Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, God, certainly I will be with you. God said he was going to use this murderous Moses, and Moses says, who am I? You're going to use me? Now Moses, we'll put this in perspective, he wasn't necessarily concerned about his murderous past. It might have been in his head, but he was more concerned with the fact, he said, I'm not equipped. He said, I don't speak well. You can't use me. I have these insecurities. Do you really know what you're getting into if you say you're going to try to use me? I'm too broken. You can't use me. But look what God said. God said, certainly I will be with you. This morning, as we're in this series, I want you to know truth. God is with broken people. This morning, God is with broken people. When we look at others and we see their brokenness, we need to look at them and say, God is with them. When we look at our own brokenness and we think, I'm too broken to do that, we need to realize God is with us. And even though we're too broken, he can still use us and work in us. Because God is with broken people. And it's always been this way. And it's always going to be this way. It's not going to change. God is with us in the middle of our brokenness this morning. And he's always found a way to save his broken people. He has always done this. And Moses plays a big part in that. First, Moses himself is forgiven from his actions, and then he's used despite his insecurities and his brokenness. God uses Moses to help save a broken humanity. Moses gives the people the law, and the law was so instrumental in the Old Testament. The law is what God is using to try and at that point help to save his broken people and give them some rules and regulations. In Exodus 24, we see Moses go up on a mountain and he gets the 10 Commandments and completes the Old Covenants. When he did this, he left the people. He went up on a mountain and he left the people down below him. It says in Exodus 24, when Moses set out with Joshua, his aide, and Moses went up on the mountain of God, he said to the elders, wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you. And anyone involved in a dispute can go to them. So in chapter 24 of Exodus, in this story of Moses, we see him go up to get this 10 Commandments. And this wasn't a quick deal by any stretch of the imagination. What's going on here is God is still trying to save his broken people. Like we looked at last week when God went to work in the garden to save broken people. God's doing it again. He's going to work on a mountaintop now to save his broken people. He was going to try to give them some rules and tell them some certain things to do. So he sent a man up on a mountain, gave him some guidelines, and an insanely broken man at that. So Moses goes up there and it takes a while. He's getting a lot of instructions. This wasn't some 5-minute phone call between God and Moses where he just kind of jotted some stuff down, shorthanded it. It's not what's going on here. It actually just starts out in chapter 24. And this conversation doesn't end until the middle of chapter 32 of Exodus. So this is a long conversation. He was up there for a long time. It says he was there on the mountain for 40 days. For 40 days he's up there and having the people wait on him. I think that's neat. I think the number, on a different note, that the number that he's up there for 40 days is kind of neat. You see, a few different times when God goes to work, he goes to work for 40 days. So God here in this situation, he goes up on this mountain for 40 days to work and to try and save the people. Then we see in Noah's time, he's trying to save the humanity, and he saved brokenness, and he does it in 40 days. And then when Jesus came, he came for the sole purpose of saving brokenness, and he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. He came back from the resurrection for 40. This number of 40, God goes to work for 40 days. And if we're not going to change our title of this series, but if we were, I think 40 days to save the world would kind of fit, right? God goes to work for 40 days to save all brokenness. But it's significant that Moses is up there for the sole purpose of fixing our brokenness, something God continually has to do because we continually mess up. But while Moses was up there, the people got a little bit tired of waiting, and this morning we're not going to read all of it, but I want to look at briefly chapter 32. Look at what happens in Exodus chapter 32. While Moses and God are having this conversation on the mountain, the people are getting restless. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down, he was up there a long time. I mean, imagine if our president, let's say President Trump said, I'm going to go on a vacation, he's gone for 40 days. You're going to start to think, man, our leader's been gone a while. We should do something about this. And the same situation, right? When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron, kind of the vice president, if you will. They gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. We don't know where he went. We don't know if he's coming back. I mean, he's been gone a while. Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives and your sons and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed, made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. They said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. The next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down, because your people whom you brought up out of Egypt have become corrupt. We always tend to become corrupt, don't we? Your people who you brought up from Egypt have become corrupt. They've been quick to turn away from what I commanded. So quick to forget, right? They've been quick to turn away from what I commanded them. They've made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They've bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, these are Israel who brought you out of Egypt. The story goes on. We're going to skip ahead 10 verses or so. In verse 19 it says, when Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned. He threw the tablets out of his hand, breaking them into pieces at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf and the people that had made it and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it into powder, scattered it onto water, and made the Israelites drink it. He's upset, wasn't he? He said to Aaron, what did these people do to you that they led you into such great sin? Don't be angry, my Lord, Aaron answered. You know how prone these people are to evil. Are we not prone to evil this morning? They said to me, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. So I told them, whoever has gold, take it off. They gave me the gold. I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. It just happened. Moses saw that people were running wild, and that Aaron had to let them get out of control and so become a laughing stock to their enemies. So he stood at the entrance of the camp and said, whoever is for the Lord, come to me. And all the Levites rallied to him. And he said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each man strap a sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor. The Levites did as Moses commanded. And that day, about 3,000 of the people died. Then Moses said, you have been set apart from the Lord today, for you were against your own sons and brothers, and he has blessed you this day. The next day Moses said to the people, you committed a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord, for perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. So Moses went back to the Lord and said, oh, what great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now please forgive their sin, but if not, then blot me out of the book you have written. The Lord replies, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin. The Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they had did with the calf. There's a lot of brokenness in that story. It's an intense story. It's a big event in the life of Moses. It's a big event in the story of God's people. In that story, we see a lot of things happening, but one main thing we see is brokenness, is sin, is evil. It is this idea of leaving God. There's no way around it this morning. We are broken. No different than the Israelites who decided that they wanted to leave God. They were tired of waiting. See, God was working. He was doing something, but He was doing it up on a mountaintop that they couldn't see. And they said, I'm tired of waiting. I can't see anything. How often does that happen in our lives? Just think about it. How often are you down here in a valley, something's going wrong, and you say, I'm tired of waiting on this situation to get better. I'm tired of waiting on someone else to fix it. I'm going to do this. We do that too often. That's what happened with the Israelites. God was up there with Moses doing something to fix brokenness. But while He was up there, the people didn't see it. They didn't see what was going on. They just said, we're tired of waiting. We don't know what's going on. We're going to fix it ourselves. I think we do that too often. God, I'm in this intense situation. I don't know what you're doing to fix it, so I'm going to do this myself. And it just leads to sin and brokenness. We're prone to evil. We mess up. We're sinful and broken. And so were the Israelites. They gave up on God, and they wanted something else to worship. And we see in this story, and we've known it to be true probably our whole life, that God hates evil and sin and brokenness. He can't deal with it. He says this sin has to be punished. This is where we remind ourselves that even though we're all broken, we don't just take it lightly. We're still looking. We need to realize our brokenness. Like we talked about last week, we need to try and limit our brokenness because our God has to punish sin. Then we come to the truth this morning that this same God that has to punish sin is still trying to find a way to save His broken people. Because God loves His people. He could have stopped being with us. I mean, He even threatened to go away from His people here in this story when Moses broke the tablets. But after all, God continued to dwell. So this all happened in chapter 32, and a little bit later, this same God says, okay, we'll try it again. Okay, you messed up. You're broken. But we'll try this all over again. Look at what happens. I want to tell you this morning, we give God plenty of overtime. We really do. He does something once and we mess it up. Okay, I'll do it again. We mess it up. Okay, I'll try it again. We give God plenty of overtime this morning. This is what happens in Exodus 34. God went back to work to do something He'd already done because we had messed it up. In Exodus 34, the Lord said to Moses, chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones. He says, now I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and then come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain. So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up to Mount Sinai. Early in the morning as the Lord commanded him. And he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. Then the Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed His name, the Lord. He passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. And He does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Moses bowed down to the ground at once in worship. Lord, he said, if I found favor in your eyes, then go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sins, and take us as your inheritance. The Lord said, I'm making a covenant with you. Before all your people, I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world, and the people that you live among will see how awesome the work that I, the Lord, has done. I want to tell you something this morning. When the Lord went to work, it was awesome. This is where we're going to start to wrap up this morning. We see the story of God and His broken people continuing. We see this cycle that we're messing up, and God is still seeking to save our brokenness. And we see the truth that God can save us from any brokenness. What a great miracle that is, that despite how broken we are, God is still going to work to save us. And spoiler alert, He's successful. He does so. You just need to wait on Him. You need to know that you can't save yourself. No matter what's going on, you can't do something to fix your brokenness on your own. You can't save others' brokenness on your own. So many people will ask, well, how can I save them? Well, how can I fix them? I want to tell you something this morning. You can't. You can't. You can't fix someone else's brokenness. You can't even fix your own. What you can do is say, Lord, I know you're working. I know you're working to fix this. I know you're working to save this. Please continue to do it, even though I may not see what's going on right now. The original, back to the Prince of Egypt, the original, there's a song at the end there talking about this miracle of salvation. The original lyrics to the song said you can do miracles when you believe. After some controversy, those lyrics were changed to say there can be miracles when you believe. And the reason that they changed these lyrics is because they knew that we can't work miracles. We can't do the miraculous. This morning, as we know, we are broken people. And even though it seems like it would take a miracle for someone to still love us and still save us and still look past our past, I want to tell you that's just what happened on the cross. A miracle. A miracle that saved our brokenness. Though we are evil this morning, though we are broken, though we mess up, God will still use us. God will still love us, and we are still God's people this morning. No matter our past brokenness, He's still going to go to work to save us this morning. And I want you to know this morning that Jesus died to save broken people with broken pasts. I want you to know that no matter your past, God's people are broken people. If you're broken this morning, I want you to understand the miracle of Calvary. When on that cross, we talked a little bit about punishment, how it has to be punished. And that's the miracle of the cross. On that cross, your brokenness, your sin, your crimes were paid for by the blood of Jesus. And all of that happened so that your past, so that your sins could be fixed. So that your brokenness could be looked past, so that you could be set right with God. And because of what Jesus did for you this morning, you can be called a child of God. As we sing this morning, I want to open up this altar to broken people. If you need to come up and pray this morning, feel free. If there's a decision you need to make, come speak with me. Anything you need this morning, feel welcomed to come up here. But most of all, this morning, I want you to know this truth, that God's people are broken.